next speaker is Greg Blyton. The topic, conservation from an Indigenous perspective, follows on nicely. I think you've actually been the first speaker. You've provided a good basis for all of this. So Greg's an Indigenous senior lecturer, historian and researcher at the Wollotuka Institute, University of Newcastle, where he specialises in Aboriginal history, health and social justice. He's worked extensively throughout many parts of Australia as a registered nurse and a health worker, and is a strong advocate of reconciliation between Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal Australians. Thank you, Greg.
Firstly, I'll just pay my respects to the first people of these lands that we're currently occupying, and to all people that have come since. Secondly, yes, I know that the hat and the tie are not necessarily complimentary, but that won't stop me. So, you know, I've thought a little bit about this heritage stuff, and I've asked, you know, a number of Indigenous people, you know, in Australia and in America and other parts of the planet, what their understanding of heritage is. And, you know, there's parallels between, you know, Indigenous people across the planet as far as they relate to heritage. And in this context, we're talking about the heritage of rock art, which is one of the aspects of heritage. So what I'll try and do is give some sort of insight into an Indigenous perspective of what heritage is. And so I put this little photo up of this old fella that's sitting in the central Australian desert. The photo was taken around 1920 because it reminds me of this Aboriginal man when I was working out in Central Australia in the 1980s. And I was lucky that I fell under the tutelage of three senior elders in Central Australia. One of them gave me a piece of paper once and drew a little mark on it. And his name was Inkamala. And he said, go and show this to Rankaraka. So I went and showed this little symbol to Rankaraka, and he went, oh, Inkamala. And I went, huh? I'm sort of thinking, what's going on here? And he said, go and show it to Ebatarinja. So off I went and showed it to him. And he goes, oh, Inkamala. And I'm thinking, what the hell does this mean? I mean, I'm scratching my head. Anyway, Ebatarinja, Theo, the late, lived on a medium strip. You know, where the highway goes both sides. And they put grevilleas in there for the highway patrol to and things. And I said to him, he used to drink a bit, this fella. And I used to say to him, well, why do you live on the medium strip, Theo? And his smile went away, and he looked at me really, really sort of stern, and he said, this Ebatarinja land. And back in the days when this is like in the 1980s, and he was a man in his 70s or something. So back in the day when he was going through his law as a teenager, that little symbol that they gave me was part of where they were allocated. There's their place and their custodianship. And that was why he returned to that spot. He got killed walking across that road to that spot drunk. And it was the biggest funeral I saw in Alice Springs in the time I was there. So that was his heritage. That little bit of land that he was given the responsibility when he was a young man to look after, and he maintained that connection all through his life until it ended. The other aspect of heritage that needs to be looked at is the earth. And You know, in these quarters, it's known as Mimagawaja, meaning Mother Earth, and how we care for the earth. And you know, that's part of the common theme that runs across Indigenous cultures around the planet. The earth is suffering, and people are seemingly unconcerned. I've just come back from a trip to the United States. It was very exhausting. It killed me actually. 31,000 kilometres, 20 planes, travelling around the States and seeing what they're doing to the land. It was quite disturbing. And I met many Indian people on my travels, and they shared the same concerns, although their plight is much more serious, I think, than here, if that is possible. So part of that journey took me to a place called Amador County, which is Sutter Creek, which is where John Sutter started the 1849 California gold rushes. That photo there is a museum, an Indian museum, Native American Indian. Now you can see the rock in the front. There is the rest of it. And it was put up around the site. I'll just give you a brief chance to peruse that. A collaborative effort. The actual land was given to those Indian people in a grant by a benevolent colonist who decided that they would have that as part of the compensation for the loss of their lands and waterways. Now, in the vicinity of that, there's all those little, that's for soaking acorns. You get the stringent acidity out of them, and they were in proximity to and the reason I'm showing this, by the way, is that it was a neat way of preserving, identifying and sharing the rock art of that area and the culture of that area with people. So note the Rabbitohs hat. The young Indian girl. Not all teepees were made out of buffalo hide, by the way. Some of them were actually, but the whole area, this little area that's designated to cultural preservation from an Indigenous perspective. So they've got the museum to show people through. They've got, their traditional dwellings, and they've got their rock art. Rock art is everywhere. It's all over the world. That's from Libya. It shows the Western Sahara in more, before climatic change here, and it was much more hospitable than it is today. Okay, so in Australia, the comments of Bill Neegi there, I worry about that place, secret place. The reason it's a secret place is because of the impact of colonisation. Colonisation and the behaviour of colonists instilled fear and distrust into Indigenous Australians all over the place. Even to this day, you can walk around, what's that big rock out there in the centre, Uluru? And the guides will show you the different paintings. But if you're lucky, they'll go, and they'll show you some of the ones that they don't show. Because of fear. It's still there to this day. And mistrust that has been built over decades. We've got those types of things in our vicinity here. That's old Tiddly, the frog. And he's, if you're going up from Millfield on the way to Wollombi, he's up on the left there, looking down. He survived. I mean, on some occasions he's been under threat. One of the property owners that purchased that property, whether they realised Tiddalik was there or not, I'm not sure, but when they bought it, they suddenly discovered there were people rocking up there every weekend wanting to see Tiddalik. So he put out a broadcast, he was going to blow Tiddalik up with dynamite and people couldn't stop turning up in his property. This is you know, Tiddalik is vulnerable. And I suppose that there's a chance that someone could blow him up. Now those two examples of rock art, one is at the map site up at Wollombi, which is probably one of the most unique pieces of rock art on the planet. And the other one is down in Sydney, it's a bull shark. Now that rock ledge that goes from Wollombi all the way to Sydney is covered in rock art. It is prolific. Most of it is hidden and most of it is unknown. It has been subject to vandalism over the years, rock art around Australia. And this is why people are reluctant, people that know where it all is, are reluctant to share that. Because, for example, there was a women's kitchen at Wollombi where there were all these sandstone bowls that had been carved out. And they were, you know, for whatever women were doing with them. It's not none of my business, but they were using them for herbs and different things to make up medicines and so forth. And some fool decided that they go well in his landscaping plans. And we got in there with a kanga hammer and a trumpet, and then they're gone. They're disappeared. We still have Tiddalik and Biami. I'm not sure what status Biami is currently, whether he's under the Heritage Protection Act or not, but there's many interpretations of Biami. Some interpret his arms extended as that he's welcoming people to the valley because it was a meeting place, a gathering of people. Others interpreted that he was flying, he's one of the sky spirits. I'll leave it to you to decide how you value heritage is the critical thing, and why you value it. Many of the important rock art sites between Sydney and Newcastle have been destroyed and no longer with us. As a result of that, they are lost. Now, what the hell's that? There's a platypus and a bandicoot. The last platypus in Newcastle was sighted in Cardiff, in a creek, in 1917. The last bandicoot sighted in Newcastle, well, they could have made a recurrence in Blackburn, but it was 1948. Once upon a time there were emus wandering around here. But they sort of said, no, we're out of here, folks. We're going to go inland. And they took off. But we lose that heritage because to an Indigenous person that is just as important. Rock art is critical. And it's all parts of a connection. When you start taking those parts away, the lack of understanding, and respect and appreciation of Indigenous rock art in Australia is, to me, part of the ongoing process of dispossession. You know, the loss continues because it's not being respected as much as it should be. not saying that there aren't good people out there. The example I'll give you is the recent establishment of the junk food shop, in Hunter Street, Newcastle. A 6,500-year-old tool site is discovered. Do they jump up and say, "Eureka, what a wonderful find"? No. They put up that. That's lost heritage. That's gone out the window. And I think the things moving forward to the future that we need to look at, we need to identify what is important. Heritage is a different thing, as you all know, to different people. To some people, it's. I was going to put up a photo of a pub, a hotel in Nottingham, in England, where one of my ancestors originated. It goes back to the 17th century. I don't deny my European heritage, but what I value is not buildings and things like that. I mean, what I value is the earth, the land, and everything contained within it, every living creature. Where I live is in a forest somewhere up north, and for years I used to watch wallabies and kangaroos come down the hills and mountains where I live onto this big flat land. And they used to come down, and then in the evenings they would retreat back up into the hills and stay there. And then along came a barbed wire fence that cut straight across the tracks that they travelled. And that to me hurt. That was loss. That was losing heritage, because if those animals and birds are hurting, then we are all hurting. You might not be aware of it, but so it is important to identify what is important to us, and everybody has to make that decision. As far as what we decide to preserve, not conserve, what we preserve. And I think the key to preservation is that heritage has got to be a shared thing. It has to be shared, it has to be openly communicated between cultures, and as a way of building reconciliation and strength between cultures. I beat your bell. I'm done.
That's all. You're happy to take some questions and stay a little bit longer.
Yes.
So I open the floor. Anybody want to start the ball rolling? Thank you.
Yeah, just one question, mate. I wasn't that in too well, wasn't it? I can remember a while back to the days around 1970, when a lady by the name of Jean Easto bought the property where this so-called Tiddalik frog is. I was up there with a day with a bloke by the name of Percy Haslam. There's probably a number of people here who know Percy Haslam or knew Percy Haslam. And to this day, I don't think he gets the recognition that he deserves. But while we were up there, Jean said, "Look, by the way," he said, "there's a unusual rock formation on this property." And we went down there with Percy, and he said, "Yeah," he said, "it looks like a frog." And frog, that was Percy Haslam in 1970, gave that frog its name, Tiddalik. He said, "I'll give it an Aboriginal name for frog, Tiddalik." Prior to 1970, I can honestly say no one ever knew that rock was there. And it was only after the 1970s that Tiddalik became in so-called Aboriginal folklore.
Take the point. Percy Haslam, certainly in his time, and at the time he was around was very passionate about all those types of things, and he certainly should be given credit for that passion and the enthusiasm that he brought at a time when not everybody was agreeing with what he was doing. So yeah.
And through Percy Haslam that my family, as John and Will say, we donated an exceptionally large collection of Aboriginal artefacts to this university. It was collected over many years, over many generations. And I just question today sometimes people's motives that get caught up in the Aboriginal industry today. And when you've been associated with Perth for as long as we did, I was nearly more in the 70s, but my late father and uncle, they knew him well into the 60s. And what he'd done, without the likes of the Percy Haslams today, then, that faithfully set out and recorded and talked to the old original people that lived there and recorded their history, that would have been lost. And it's now it's people that come along the day, they read the Percy Haslam material and go away and become experts.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah, like I said, I mean, at the time he was part of the revitalisation of Aboriginal culture, and within this area he was very significant as far as what he did. And like all things, we in this, I couldn't agree more with you. The politics of it all and the so-called industry that's evolved since is certainly problematic and needs to be refined and improved, because it's not in its current state. One of the things about heritage, in my opinion, is you can't own it. You can't say that's exclusively my heritage and no one else's. And I think this is one of the problems that's emerged in recent times. People are actually trying to take ownership of this stuff. And to my way of thinking, that don't work.
I'd also like to make a comment about the protection of some of these sites. Like, we've seen examples where sites have been vandalised, and I guess most of those sites now have some kind of heritage order on them, which is obviously a good thing, because it means that someone vandalising it could be prosecuted if they're caught. But still, all it takes is some arsehole with a spray can to go there and, if the site is not physically protected. And yet, if you're going to rope it off with iron mesh and stuff, that, to my view, would detract from the site anyway. So, what do you do?
Well, as far as I know, that you've got to go and produce a licence now to go and buy spray cans. I think that is definitely a valid concern. The probably more concerning is not the idiot with the spray can, but the idiots with pens that give approvals to develop and whatever they do. Without actually going through any sort of consultation. The Australian Heritage Act, as it stands in 1984, has got a lot of loopholes, and it's preserved, but in the event of, it's not preserved, and I think the key to it is educating people to be aware. And that's one of the things Percy Haslam certainly did. He created an awareness of the importance of Aboriginal culture and raising that awareness. But there's still a long way to go, I think, before people become aware of what valuable heritage they have. People tend to, just take it for granted, but, we live in a wonderful country where we're blessed with so many, incredible natural resources. Yet we seem to just sort of rather casually and carelessly carry on without really sort of regarding these things as important. The future is waiting for what we leave as a legacy. And I think that where we are today, we're coming out of a dark age. I call the colonisation of Australia a dark age, where a lot of bad stuff happened, where Aboriginal culture was probably the least respected culture on the planet at the time, and that legacy still endures, and so it's very difficult to get heritage up in a way that's positive and meets the needs of all. It's no point just having it up as a cauldron of Aboriginal heritage and it's exclusive and bars everything. That's just stupid. But like I said, I think that there's got to be education around these issues, and people have got to, like I've sat up on that map site there. We've had 150 North American Indians, come and visit. 150 Aboriginal people that all sat up there and spent, a couple of wonderful nights. I should have acknowledged Uncle Bill, who's sitting over there in the corner, who has also been probably the most significant person in the last 2 decades for revitalising Aboriginal culture in this area, and would have made, how many trips you made up to that map site and that old frog?
Lost count.
Huh?
Lost count.
Lost count.
There's a lot of people.
Taking schools and sharing those with school kids and international visitors and things like this. And, they're just, it's one of the things that always distressed me was that international visitors were more appreciative of the culture of Australia, Indigenous, than the people living here. And that's including black, white and Britain. This is
Just, if I may, for a little bit of clarification. The gentleman over here, I knew Percy has a long, long time. When I was a rumper, 16 years of age, I moved around this area with old Darkington elder, Tom Sales. I buried him with his son, Harry. And I remember them coming to my office when I used to be out at Lake Macquarie City Council, apart from moving around the land. And a lady by the name of Smith used to paint and sketch all the objects and artifacts. And old Tom would tell Percy what it was. Percy was a journalist, very sensitive, very humane and very passionate, right? But old Tom Hawke Sales took me out to those places, showed those things, and that's a beautiful collection that Percy's left in that sense, right? But there's other collections here in this university too that came from other people that went out there and gathered that information, brought it here, and the people that own it haven't been given that recognition. So it's good what non-Indigenous people have done and worked with Aboriginal people as well in possibly documenting things and putting together. But I remember old Jean, that dear old lady, and I know she showed you right down at the bottom there, there's a birthing cave, a facility cave and all that, right? And since that person's coming in now, he stopped those sort of things, right? But I still take people all around the world, all different nationalities. 40 came from Paris, right? And shared that. Because those old fellas showed me and told me, and old Grandpa Joe Woodrow, old fellas shared and told me to come down with the meals. This is our country, this is our people, and what these sites mean. And they need to be preserved, they need to be protected. And we as people, in the race, colour and creed, nation, has got to protect that. Because you've got your heritage too. But ours are hold us from all this land, hold this education. And we need, because that's the history of this country. the foundation of this country. So, Greg, I commend you, and yes, those are the top men. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Greg. So, up to one more questions? Yes.
You talk about conservation and heritage point. A number of people have already mentioned KFC site. What should have happened? Because other than that, should have not been built, should it have been, as they do in some other areas, clear it out?
I think what
would have happened?
In September last year, I caught a cab in Memphis to the Lorraine Hotel. The Lorraine Hotel was where Martin Luther King was shot. And there's still a reef where he walked onto the veranda and was assassinated. And there's 2 Cadillacs in the car park in this place where this Lorraine Hotel. Now, alongside the Lorraine Hotel, the Civil Rights Museum has been erected to commemorate what contribution Dr. Martin Luther King made to the civil rights movement. Now, I think that would have possibly been a solution that could have been considered with the KFC site. You know, they've discovered this 6,500 year old. There's some sort of building or something should have been put there to commemorate it and acknowledge it and possibly display what was found within it. You know, so they coexist. You know, I think people have got to be realistic. The legalities and corporate law and all the stuff that goes into the development of these things is involving lots of money. And I think that part of the solution is working out some form of coexistence. Where there's respect, acknowledgement given, development. So that's how
add to Greg's comment that, Indigenous, so I can't. I'm not Indigenous, so I cannot speak in place of Indigenous. But there are very good examples, and this question that you brought up, that what else could have been done, is very important. Because what else could be done is to look at the examples that have been practiced all around the world in smart ways. At the moment, that is a good example that you made, but at the moment, in more recent things, I was reading a few days ago that they have discovered in Rome, they have discovered archaeological site under the subway. And the amount of work that they are doing in preserving the Roman remains is very much interesting, and it is worth to look by the practitioners. So when we go to negotiate for the situation of the site, we can give them some alternative that yes, it has been done in America, yes, it has been done in Croatia, it has been done in Italy, and all around the world. The only thing is that to look for alternative ways rather than just to do what we think is easier.
Can I say that on the other end of the KFC block, right on the building which is a radiography building, right next to Cottage Creek, there is a big plaque there that does acknowledge that Aboriginal artefacts were found on that site, and upwards of 2,000 bodies, because it also happened to be the site of the Presbyterian and Catholic cemeteries before Sandgate was built. So there is a plaque that just acknowledges that they did find Aboriginal artefacts there.
That's a good start.
Just a comment, Dr. Curran, if you don't mind, with regard to the KFC site, what we used to call the Palais site, the original development application was for a 15-storey residential building. And the developer was the father of somebody who later became a Member of Parliament for a certain local seat, who subsequently had to resign for other reasons. The DA said that the facade of the old Palais Royal, which we'd all remember, had to be preserved. There was a flood, Cottage Creek came up. Cottage Creek, as most people would know, used to wind through that KFC site just behind it before it was canalised in about 1890. They said, oh, the flood unfortunately has weakened the footings of the facade. I would make no comment as to the veracity or the motivation for that comment. The DA was altered for the KFC. Another thing, the cottage, one of the so-called government cottages of the government farm, and the crossing of Cottage Creek was there from the convict station days. That's where the Reverend Lancelot Threlpelt, as Greg fully well knows, the first missionary to the Aborigines in these parts, lived for a couple of years before he established his mission, first at Belmont and later moved to what's now Toronto. So there's a multi-layered history there, and it provides many lessons, not just Indigenous. And as for the graveyard, some of my family are buried there. The developer insisted that the graves had been moved in about 1916 to Sandgate. But my family was sent a letter in 1916 asking what they wanted to do with the stiffs. Do you want to move the stones alone or the bodies? My family said no, just the stones. But the developer would not listen to the local knowledge, so of course, as soon as they commenced work, they struck the graves.
Well, a lot of the graves of the Presbyterian part are out at Sandgate Cemetery.
But not my family's.
And not the Catholics, as far as I know.
I think that this actually is part of our problem, right? Now, there was no need for that horrible development. It could have been excellent. It could have been multi-layered. It was in the public ownership. And then it was sold. It was put into the control of Honeysuckle. See, we allow institutions to be set up like Honeysuckle that have no intention of doing anything that's to do with Newcastle, and that is a problem, a political problem, and so that we need a little bit of humility, and we need to listen, and we need a little bit more of not just intelligence, but
Sensitivity.
sensitivity.
Can I
Yes,
just
please.
point
Yes.
out, in Sydney, when they discovered the old government
Oh, yes.
house, which had a big Aboriginal sign on, it has all been incorporated into the Museum of Sydney. We don't have to go very far to find out what we can do, and that's the great tragedy.
Thank you very much, Linda. Uncle Bill.
Yeah, just one thing. When you look at Hunter Valley, you look at Australia as a whole, and as Greg said, you look over the world, we've got some of the most significant, sacred and richest sites here in this Hunter Valley. And they're part of this history of Australia. And we as people must work together, as Greg is saying, to preserve and protect. That goes for all areas. I always say, always remember your belongings, where you come from, and your roots, and your origin. Speak your language, what you've got to do. But the first and only one who keeps us alive is us. The first people of this land, this country. But we welcome you here. And just to share again, like up Miami, you showed him up there, way back. This black one was the first one to bring the law back into this country. Over 100 years, recorded by this university. And we had stairways put up there because too many people didn't fit into the slate and touching it. And they found, as Greg knows, a sacred rock there, going back 6,000 years. So what we talk about is very rich, but it hasn't been possibly respected in that sense. Because one must respect oneself, respect other people, and speak the same way as other people, and expose themselves and treat them the same way. This is good. This is good. And
Thank you.
to
Thank you
share it.
very much.
Thank you, Greg,
Thank
once
you.
again.
We'll make this last question. Thank you.
Thank you. Just kind of tying in what everybody's saying, my father was an excavator driver at the tax office, and he was specifically told that if he came across any Aboriginal artefacts, he was to smash them and not tell anybody. Do you see an end in sight for that kind
Yeah,
of...
I mean, that mentality hopefully is in the wind and gone, you know, I mean, like a rubber silver, you know, if you find something, bury it, you know, it's the same mentality, and I think we hopefully will move into a new age. I'd just like to personally thank you all for attending today, and appreciate very much that, you know, the time you've given up for what is obviously obviously a really important issue.
And I would say thank you, because you've actually brought a lot of ideas out from what is that we actually need. What you said about joining the dots. There's a lot of knowledge in this room. It would be good to put it all together, and it's your talk to start it off. I'd also like to say, from a personal point of view, Percy Haslam would have loved to have been sitting down the back listening to this. Because he would have seen how much more knowledge has come to the fore, and how much you've brought it from the local to the national, to the international, to that global picture. I think what you had to say about the Indians and the relationship with the earth, and how important that is. God knows how we will ever get that kind of relationship. But I will also say that we owe a lot to Percy, because I remember Jean Easthope, who you remember. I went to visit her because she was a research assistant to Colleen McCulloch. She was doing a lot of work at that stage on Roman history, getting assisted by somebody from Macquarie University. When I went into her room, on that, where the frog is, etc., she had this huge box of papers that was the papers belonging to Percy Haslam.
And a guy that donated them to the Newcastle University.
Well, that's good. And I used them to help my granddaughter write an essay on Percy Haslam for a cultural project for the HSC. And I know that I think John Maynard might have used them to write a book on Percy Haslam. Is that right?
They were due to go to the tip. And Jean was leaving and she didn't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
I said, this is Percy's life. I can't leave them here.
And
I'll
I
take
used them
them.
in my exegesis paper, I must say. I read through and searched and found
There you are.
no.
So you've kicked off a lot, but before you go, you don't need anything to protect you. That's the nourish you.
Thanks very much. Have a good day.